Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Nelson, here on this wonderful Wednesday afternoon. And we've got a lot to talk about in this podcast for today. So for the first segment, we're going to just give an update on each and every NFL coach and each and every NFL GM that has either been fired or has decided to move on. We're going to talk about the opening positions and things like that. Then in the second segment, which is probably going to be the more meatier segment of all the other segments, we are going to be ranking each and every single NFL playoff team that's currently in the playoffs and the teams that are going to be playing in the wild card and what I think is going to happen. Then in the third segment, we are going to be talking about Brock Purdy and the situation around his contract and what to expect going into this offseason. I'm just going to lower the volume just a little bit. Hold on just one second. There we go. Then in the fourth segment, we're going to talk about we're going to do a little update on the Jimmy Butler trade talks and sort of what's going on. What seems to be the most likely destination that Jimmy Butler is going to end up going, if he is even going anywhere. And then finally, we're going to talk about the NBA games that happened yesterday, because there were a couple of them, and some of those results were a little bit unexpected, like Trae Young's half-court game winner. Those are going to be what we talk about for today in these segments. Before I begin, I would like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether it is a hot take, whether it's a burning question, something that you're just dying to share. We're all ears, and if you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You click on the $sign below the chat box. If that's not really your thing, then you can always use the link displayed below the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. And you can send in your comments and or donations that way as well. Either or really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. So let's go ahead and get into this first segment where we talk about the coaches and the GMs and their situations. We already know that Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, we know that they're safe, and we know that they are not going to get fired after the abysmal 3-13 season that they had. But to be fair, they had Daniel Jones, who was really the only player, in my opinion, that deserved to get fired in the NFL. The only real problem with the team. But aside from that, there are now 6 head coach opening spots. There's 6 head coaching spots available in the NFL and these teams right now, since the regular season has been wrapped up. A lot of these teams have been just waiting for the offseason to finally make these moves. And the quickest one was obviously the New England Patriots. I mentioned this before, where they ended up firing Gerard Mayo on Sunday. And the Pats, they finished with a 4-13 record. And while I feel like this decision was decided way before Week 18 concluded in the NFL, I will say that's a little bit too quick to fire a coach, because let's put it this way. The Bill Belichick, he's had so many years with the Patriots. This Gerard Mayo, he has 1 year with the Patriots, and they immediately say that they're done with him. That was ridiculously quick. So maybe they already have a new head coach in mind, because I don't really see why you would want to fire the head coach literally after just one season on a team that already was not really expecting that much. And there's no way that the Patriots really thought that they were going to be good this year. I mean, nobody thought that the Patriots were going to be good this year. So I think that might have been a little bit too premature to fire their coach, only because it's like you have to give the coach a little bit of time, and if you don't really see much progress coming in from the coach, that's when you fire him. But 1 year, the coach is not going to be able to just immediately turn a team that's not expected to do anything in the NFL into a playoff team or into a decent team. That just doesn't happen. And the Jaguars also were a team that did not waste much time in firing Doug Peterson. But they did retain their GM Trent Balk, or again, forgive me if I messed up that last name. But I will say, I don't really think Doug Peterson is, again, Doug Peterson was kind of terrible in the final years of him being the coach. But then again, Trevor Lawrence wasn't really that good either. I thought Trevor Lawrence was going to have a solid season, but he ultimately did not. Remember when he was drafted, a lot of people were expecting Trevor Lawrence to be this incredible quarterback and to be this showstopper of a quarterback that, like, people were literally tanking to try and get Trevor Lawrence, but ultimately that did not pan out, at least as of right now. Like, I mean, the first 2 years he gets a little bit of a pass because he was in a bad situation and the team was bad, but right now the excuses are running a little bit thin, and Trevor Lawrence is like, I feel like this move was a little more of a scapegoat than anything else, but then again, Doug Peterson wasn't all that good of a coach last season. But again, I digress. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. On Tuesday, the Raiders ended up letting go of Antonio Pierce, but they did also hold on to their GM Tom Telesco. So right there, those are two teams that just got rid of their coach but did not get rid of their general manager. And there are already other sports teams right now that have a head coach to have a head start in rebuild, with the Chicago Bears. They fired Matt Eberflus. The New Orleans Saints fired Dennis Allen. And the Jets already fired Robert Saleh. Those were the coaches that, were fired in like the middle of the season. And I expected that happening. Like Matt Eberflus, I knew that coach was going to eventually end up getting fired because he was not a good recipe with Caleb Williams. However, I will say constantly bringing in new coaches for a rookie quarterback is never a good thing, and it always leads to problems more often than not. And again, each of those franchises has been linked to notable candidates, including ex-head coaches like Mike Vrabel and Ron Rivera. And where would these big names end up going to next? Like, which teams are sort of going to be in that situation to make a sweeping, like an overhaul of their own? And as of right now, these are the only updates that we really have on the coaching and the GM situation. Obviously, it's still very, very early into a lot of teams' off seasons, so we'll just have to see exactly how that goes. There were it was interesting in a meeting. Apparently, somebody brought up that there is a possibility that Ryan Day might end up being the head coach for Chicago, which I personally do not see happening, but I just thought I should bring that up. Let me know what you guys think about that. Again, I don't think that's going to happen whatsoever. And after that, they are interviewing Chiefs assistant GM Mike Borgonzi and the Chiefs offensive coordinator Matt Nagy. This was tweeted out on January 8th, and so literally today at 8:23 in the morning. And sources told NFL on CBS, Borgonski can interview in person per league rules, while Nagy's interview is going to be virtual. So those are the players not the players. Those are the coaches that the Jets are looking to bring in. There was also another tweet saying that the Dolphins defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver will interview today with the Saints for their vacant head coaching position. And let's see what other tweets. Now, the Bears, they also plan on interviewing Pete Carroll for their head coaching vacancy. The only coach to win a Super Bowl with the Seattle Seahawks, and also the only coach to decide to not run the ball at the 1 yard line with Marshawn Lynch or Russell Wilson. That decision is still going to haunt me to this day because it gave Tom Brady another Super Bowl ring that he did not deserve because you're at the 1 yard line, run the ball with Marshawn Lynch. And then finally, the Cowboys, they blocked the Bears' attempt to interview Mike McCarthy. Thank the Lord, because as a Giants fan, I love Mike McCarthy as the coach. For the Cowboys, he will always mess up when you need him most. And also, the Giants have already beaten a Mike McCarthy coached team in the postseason. And we all know that, Cowboys fans, they might not really be that big of a fan of Mike McCarthy. I mean, I'm a huge fan because it just helps the downfall of the Cowboys happen a lot quicker. But I digress. Now, the Patriots, they also plan to interview Mike Vrabel on Thursday, so those are other reports. And that's really those are all the reports that I was able to sort of, gather up yesterday. So again, it's still early in the offseason for a lot of these teams, so anything can happen and any news can break out at any given moment. So that's all that I have in this first segment. So now we're going to go into the second segment where I rank each and every single playoff team from worst to best. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows where 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be ranking each and every single one of the playoff teams, which teams I think are going to make the most noise, as well as the teams that I think are just going to either flop or not do anything. So let me just go ahead and bring that list up right now. Before I begin, I would like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether it's a hot take, whether it's a burning question, something that you're just dying to share. We're all ears, and if you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Either or really help the show, make the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net. And let's go right ahead and get into this right now. So the worst team, I think, in the postseason is, and I'm sure a lot of you guys see this coming, it is the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers, they play some of the ugliest football that you can ever imagine in like 90% of their games. They take a lot of field goals, they play a lot of defense, and they get stops, but they don't really generate much when they get those stops. They have had, a couple of high-scoring games, yes, but for the most part, this team tends to it's just boring to watch Steelers games, in my opinion. It is unbelievable, how they're able to have winning season after winning season after winning season while still playing horrible. And it really doesn't matter the quarterback at the helm for this team. They still find ways to win. Obviously, that spells out, good team, competent team. But in this case, for the Steelers, it does not. Every single year we see them go positive, and almost every single year when they do end up going positive, they finish the year off losing a bunch of games, and then they go into the postseason and they don't win anything in the postseason. So I expect absolutely nothing less coming in from the Steelers in the postseason for this year. It's just blah for the Steelers. And a lot of people, they like to put themselves in playoff purgatory, and for this specific reason, the fact that they make the playoffs every single time, they want to fire their head coach, which is unbelievably spoiled, in my opinion. If your problem is that you always make the playoffs, I would love to have that problem. But I digress. The next worst team, at least in my opinion, is the Dallas Cowboys. I'm just kidding. The Cowboys did not even make the playoffs, but they would be at the bottom of this list, by the way, if they did. But anyways, the real second worst team, are the Houston Texans. Now, these guys, they've been playing bad. CJ Stroud has been playing bad. A big reason is because they have suffered from injuries in the regular season, but CJ Stroud has not been the same generational talent that he was in his rookie year, which is a little bit odd, but that might be, what happens when teams sort of figure you out, teams figure out your tendencies, teams actually have NFL film that they can look at and accurately scout you. And I will say, I am rather surprised that CJ Stroud has not sort of, emerged as one of the top players and one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. I really thought that was going to happen, eventually. Like, I really, really did think that was going to happen, but it did not. And that's sort of been the slight issue that I've had with a team like this. And really, it's just, quarterback play. Like, it's ridiculous how bad quarterbacking can be the main reason why you lose a bunch of these games. And there's really not much that needs to be said other than, like, I think this team incredibly underperformed and they missed the mark on the ability to have an incredible season with CJ Stroud. I mean, there was, again, the biggest reminder of that was their matchup against the Detroit Lions, where Jared Goff turned into Jared Goof, threw 5 interceptions, and they still were able to lose that game because they could not score in the second half of that game whatsoever. It was absolutely disgusting. And those kind of games, you absolutely cannot lose. When the quarterback is just giving you the ball, you cannot afford to lose that, like, at all. Like, it was really, really bad. Now, the next team on this list was a little bit difficult, but I'm going to go with the Broncos and the big reason why I'm going with the Broncos is because while Bo Nix played really well at the end of the week and beat the Chiefs, he was playing against the Chiefs' second unit. And I think that the Broncos and their inexperience is going to get the best of them when going into this postseason. That being said, however, I also think that the Broncos have the ability to actually pull off an upset against the Bills. Like, I know that I think the Bills are going to end up winning the game, but if there was any team that I genuinely think could actually do the upset, it would be Denver going up against the Bills. I don't know why. It's something about that game where I just think something ridiculous is going to happen. But just on paper, I think that the Broncos, they're right here on this list. They're one of the third worst. That's just me though. Then the next team on this list was a little bit difficult, but I'm going to go with the Buccaneers and their roster. I know that they have a great quarterback. This is like, I consider the Bucs a pretty solid team. I consider them a good team. Borderline good team, if anything. Baker Mayfield has had a phenomenal season. They also have one of the best wide receivers, one of the most underrated wide receivers in the history of wide receivers in Mike Evans. And they could really make some noise. They did pull off an upset last season, which, was very surprising, and I really like that. But, you'd think a team that won the Super Bowl 4 years ago and has won the NFC South every season since, the last two with quarterback Baker Mayfield, they would get a little bit more respect, right? You'd think that, but I don't know. I mean, they handed Detroit one of its 2 losses in this season, but again, that was also in the beginning of the season, so I'm not entirely sure about that. But I don't know. It's like I'm not really that big on the Bucs actually beating their competition going into the wild card, despite the fact that they're going to host it. So that's really just the only problem that I have, really. Now, the next team on this list is going to be the Rams. And I mean, the big problem that I had with the Rams throughout most of the season was the fact that this team was very unhealthy. Now that they are healthy, I do think that they could be a rather competent team. The problem is that they're going to go up against probably the best number 5 seed of all time. Like that's really the big issue that is really going to go down with the Rams. They're going to have to go up against the Vikings. And, I mean, the Vikings are the only team that has to play an away wildcard game that has 14 wins. Like, that is incredible to think about. That is absolutely ridiculous to think about. But for that reason, I don't really have them ranked that high because I don't think they're going to win in that matchup. But anything can happen now that the Rams are healthy. They have incredible talent at the receiver position. So anything is possible for this team. Then the next team that I have directly in front of them is going to be the Green Bay Packers. I would have put the Green Bay Packers a little bit higher, and one of the big reasons why I left them at this is just the assumption that Jordan Love is going to be playing, right? And I was going to put them higher, but recently Jordan Love has been playing really mediocre in a lot of these games, or less than mediocre in a lot of these games, and I think that's going to be the downfall for the Packers. Now, if he's not playing, then I genuinely think that this team should be like maybe just above Pittsburgh, and maybe just above Houston, but without Jordan Love, I don't think the Packers are going to really do much or make much noise in the postseason. Like, they really, really do need Jordan Love. They need him. They desperately need him. And now, the next team directly above that is going to be Washington with Jaden Daniels and the ridiculous season that he's been having. Simply put, he knows how to close games. Obviously, he's had, some games, like some stinker performances. I mean, he put up a little bit of a stinker when he went up against the Cowboys in their matchup at home, where the Cowboys, they started returning. But then again, you can make the argument that it wasn't necessarily his fault because the Commanders' special teams was giving up touchdowns. But I will say this team, they know how to close out games with Jaden Daniels. And while a lot of people, they might call their matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a potential upset, we know that the underdogs in this team are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because Washington, they have a better record going into this wild card game against Tampa Bay. So I don't think that's going to be an upset, which is why I say that the most likely upset is going to be the Broncos going up against the Bills because, quite frankly, I don't see the Commanders as underdogs going into that game. I genuinely don't see it whatsoever. So that's all that I really got to say about that. The next team that's going on this list is the Vikings. Now, I know I talked a lot about the Vikings and how good I genuinely think they are, but I will say this. Sam Darnold's your quarterback. I don't know how much I'm like going to trust that Sam Darnold is going to actually have a really good game in the playoffs. Like, not to mention, they've been in the playoffs before, and they disappointed their fans before when they went up against the Giants when they were the favorites to win in that game. And, I mean, Sam Darnold, that's really the only issue. I mean, Sam Darnold has never played a playoff game. This is going to be the first appearance that he's in. And do you really trust him? Eventually, I've been saying this for a while, like in my head, eventually this team is going to realize the issues of having Sam Darnold at quarterback. And I think that is going to happen in the postseason. Again, I could be completely wrong because this team is very, very talented, but I would not be surprised. I genuinely would not. I would not be surprised if this team somehow drops the ball against the Rams, a much more experienced postseason team where Matthew Stafford has already won a Super Bowl, has made numerous playoffs and things like that. I would not be surprised. Now, the final 5 teams. This one was very, very tricky to get down, but I'm going to have to put the Eagles next on this list, and the reasoning for that is simply because Jalen Hurts. Now, is Jalen Hurts going to play good? Is Jalen Hurts going to play bad? I mean, is he going to be turnover prone in a lot of these games? However, I will say that, the Eagles, all of these teams that I'm going to mention, they're really, really good teams, and they have perfect potential to make a bunch of noise. Now, I will say that, Saquon has been very unguardable in this season. They have the best running back, and really the big question is whether or not Jalen Hurts is going to be turnover prone going into the playoffs. And quite frankly, I genuinely do not have this team ranked as high as the other teams going into this. It was really difficult choosing between either the Eagles or between the Bills at putting them next on this list. That was really the big issue that I've had. And I'm genuinely not entirely sure which team I would go for, but I'd say right now they're tied. And a big reason why I put Philly underneath the Bills is because I don't like Philly. That's really the only thing. But if I could, I would put them at a tie right now because I genuinely like each one of these teams. They could go really far or they could disappoint. Like, there's really no in between for either of those teams. Now, the next team on this list is going to be the Baltimore Ravens. Now, they have the MVP in Lamar Jackson. They have a star running back in Derrick Henry. Like, this is just a phenomenal season for the Ravens. And if I were to choose on which team is going to end up making the Super Bowl and my Super Bowl matchups, like, from the start of the season, I thought that it was going to be Ravens against the Lions. I was thinking a Ravens-Lions Super Bowl was going to be what we're treated to. And it could very well happen. But as of right now, I have the Ravens here at 3. And that's mainly because of the other two teams that are directly above them. They have things that I've either just never seen before or, like, I genuinely think that they could make noise, right? It's really difficult. I just put them at 3 despite the fact that they have the NFL MVP because a big reason why is Lamar Jackson's play in the postseason. Now, Lamar Jackson is notorious for underperforming in the postseason, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does that again. Now, this next team, the Detroit Lions, these guys have been ridiculous all year, and they've been scoring the ball a lot. They've been defending well. Their safety leads the league in interceptions, and they have 2-star running backs. And Montgomery is also expected to return going into the divisional game. Now, big reason why I don't have them at number 1 is because they are the Lions, and they almost made the Super Bowl last season, but then they choked it at the very end, allowing San Fran to come back. And whether or not they overcome those bugaboos is still remain to be seen, but nonetheless, this team has been a well-oiled machine in the regular season, and there's really no contest. And then finally, you guys know exactly who's at number 1, Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I will say this, that the Chiefs, they've been ridiculous. They've been great all season. They've been winning. They have the best record in the entire NFL. Big reason why that this team is so competent is because of their defense. A lot of people, they think it's dark magic that they use to win a lot of these games, but I really feel like they're just playing on easy mode. They're just steaming through the regular season, and they're only really trying hard once they get into the postseason. Simply put, Patrick Mahomes is a different animal, and I never ever count on him to lose a single game in the postseason. He just doesn't do that. He plays the regular season leaning back, and then he sits up to play in the postseason. This is a team that knows how to handle the pressure. This is a team that knows how to defend just in case the quarterback doesn't play well. This is a team that has a quarterback that has a lot of experience playing in these situations. This quarterback ended up winning a game when they were down by a field goal with 15 seconds left. So, with all that being said, I never count this team out. And I think that if the Ravens aren't going to make the Super Bowl, then the Chiefs are going to do it once again. But those are my NFL playoff rankings. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Maybe you just completely disagree with them. Maybe you think it's a horrible list. Let me know what you guys think. But that's all that I have on this second segment. So now we're going to go into the third segment where I talk about Brock Purdy and the little contract situation that he has going on. And I'll be right back after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we're going to talk about Brock Purdy and the situation that the Niners have going into this offseason. And really, it's a tough thing to ask, right? I mean, the Niners, this is the first time that they're going to miss the playoffs since 2020. Boo-hoo. And it's also going to be a rather important offseason for this team because they have to reacquire talent. They have to get rid of some talent. They have to decide whether or not they're going to get rid of Brandon Ayuk. They have to decide whether or not they're going to get rid of Deebo Samuel, all of those things. But the biggest priority right now is Brock Purdy and the quarterback situation. We already have somebody in the chats, Ash Owen. He says the Niners, they might trade Purdy. They can't do that because Brock Purdy is going to be a free agent. So they genuinely cannot do that. And to be honest, why, if you are the Niners, why would you trade Brock Purdy? It does not make much sense. But it's clear that, his contract is going to be, it could be a problem for the Niners. Now, it's not exactly confirmed, but Purdy could end up asking for around $59.7 million a year. And this would make him the second highest paid quarterback in the NFL behind yours truly, Dakota Prescott. And you know what, we might as well go ahead and get into this Dak Prescott talk because we know Dak Prescott, just a phenomenal quarterback. Just, the best, just one of the best quarterbacks. Definitely deserves all of that money just to be mediocre and make the Cowboys suffer nothing but pain and misery. That is why we love Dakota Prescott. But, answering some more of the comments that Ash Owen has, and sign Aaron Rodgers. Again with this signing Aaron Rodgers thing, I cannot with this. Aaron should just retire. Period, done, end of story. They should not even bother with Aaron Rodgers. Why would they go with an old quarterback that seems to be already washed up to, instead of a younger quarterback that could probably make the team and build around the team a little bit better? It does not make any sense. It genuinely does not make any sense to me. And you already know that Aaron Rodgers is going to bring in all of his buddies from Green Bay and Devontae Adams, which is probably going to demand a lot of money. You have no idea whether or not it's going to demand money. We have no idea. But again, it's just drama. It's unnecessary drama that you're putting on this team. And that would be one of the dumbest moves, I think, if they genuinely try and get Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers is done. Period, done. He should be done. Shanahan doesn't like Purdy. I don't like Purdy either. But again, I don't really like Aaron Rodgers more than I like Brock Purdy. Aaron, I feel like, is just a terrible option. Franchise and trade someone, will give up a first, keep it 100. No. I don't think any team is going to be shopping for Aaron Rodgers after what went down in this season with the Jets. And yes, obviously, it wasn't completely Aaron Rodgers' fault, but Aaron should be done. I'm serious about that when I say this. This should be the final year of Aaron Rodgers. That's it. And I really don't think I don't think San Fran would want him. I genuinely don't think San Fran would want a quarterback like that, as opposed to a quarterback like Brock, who is much younger and can build around. That being said, he's going to demand a lot of money. Whether or not he is worth all of that money, in my opinion, is still something that needs to be seen. Because the way I see it, Brock Purdy is a product of the system that San Fran runs. The Niners have a fantastic team. I mean, George Kittle, Debo when he decides to play well, Brandon Ayuk, all of them last season, they were incredible. They were great at getting open, and Brock Purdy, really all he had to do was be, at least in my opinion, be the facilitator for the team, and the rest of the team would get a bunch of yak, and they would get a bunch of touchdowns to make his numbers look good. And again, that's like an oversimplification of Brock Purdy, because I will say you do have to be a really solid quarterback in order to make some of the throws, and in order to do and run the offense the way that they're able to run it, at least from last season. However, since Christian McCaffrey has not been playing much, and actually rarely played in this season, it's sort of shown that the Niners, they can't really be a playoff team with Brock Purdy unless he has somebody like Christian McCaffrey at the running back, like unless they are absolutely loaded with talent. And does that make Brock Purdy the second most paid quarterback? The fact that he needs these talented players at the position in order to legitimately succeed? I don't really think so. Talking about Purdy, someone will give up a first for Purdy. The Jets probably. Stop it. Stop. I don't see that happening whatsoever. No, stop it. What's most likely going to happen is that the Niners are going to eventually give in, and they're going to offer this man this contract. But again, I don't think that that's going to happen. I'm not entirely sure if that's something that you would really want to do, but that seems to be the most likely scenario, because I don't think the Niners are really going to give up Brock Purdy like that. I know there are going to be other teams that are going to be willing to shop for him, but whether or not they're going to give him that much money, I don't know. It's really, really tough, because I don't see Brock Purdy as an elite quarterback that deserves that money. And I especially don't see Dak as an elite quarterback to deserve all that money either. And if we're being real, nobody in the NFL should be making all of that money. Like, why do you need all that money for? There's nobody that deserves to be making that money, and especially not Dak Prescott. But whether or not Brock Purdy is going to be in the situation to make that contract, he has the leverage to do so. But no, I'm not entirely sure. Purdy was an afterthought. Trey Lance was the original plan. Yes, and look what happened with Trey Lance. He is awful. He is terrible. And also, he's on the Cowboys with another bad quarterback, Dak Prescott. But again, things happen, and Trey Lance had to have been like some other level of bad if he could not succeed with the lineup that San Fran had going into last season and going into the season where he was drafted. But one thing that Purdy said was that everyone's different, just with the timing of getting something done and whatnot. For me, I want to obviously get it done. If that's an opportunity to be able to get that done quick, that'd be great, just so we can get back for phase one, get after it with the receivers and our team, and just continue to grow, because, man, we've all got to grow together. We've got to come close and learn and just be the best version of ourselves as fast as we can. And phase one, in my mind, OTAs, coming back, getting all the guys back, and let's roll. Let's get after this off season together. While the hope is for a deal to be done sooner than later, Purdy acknowledges that the timing could be different from an organizational perspective. Still, he sort of hopes to avoid any form of distraction, such as a holdout, which has been a strategy for some of his teammates in the past. But with that being said, everybody's timing is a little different, and Purdy acknowledged that. But for me, at the end of the day, I want to win. I want to win for this organization and everybody here. I'm not the kind of guy that wants to have any kind of drama associated with anything. I'm here for this organization, for my teammates in the locker room, and I want to be very professional about it. So maybe he won't end up demanding all of that money because he's clearly stated that he wants to win. So maybe he won't demand that money, but again, that money is still on the table and it is still an option. And to me, you have to be a bit of a fool in order to not really consider that option, you know? Like, that seems like too good of an offer to pass up if you could be making that much money. But if at the end of the day your main goal is winning, I mean, we know the infamous evil Tom Brady, he ended up taking several pay cuts just so that the Patriots are able to acquire talent. Maybe he follows in those footsteps, which is really the only admirable thing that I think Brady has done in his career, the fact that he takes pay cuts. But, you know, that's really besides the point. No, you rarely see many quarterbacks, at least right now in this league, take pay cuts. So I'm not entirely sure if Purdy is going to end up doing that either. But with that being said, that's all that I really have in this third segment. No, Aaron Rodgers is not going to San Fran. That is just not happening. That would be the worst thing that could happen to San Fran. For like, what would they even do with that? Just 2 years and that's it? They're probably not even going to make the NFC Championship game when they have Aaron Rodgers. Sad, but most likely true. But that's really all that I have in this third segment. Shanahan only wanted Purdy under cheap contract. Wouldn't you trade him to get value? No. Genuinely, no. I would not. I genuinely would not. Because who would they get? Who would be the next step at quarterback for this team? While I'm not really like all that high on Brock Purdy, I do have to admit that what they have going has been working. I do have to admit that what they've been doing has been working. So I don't think you really give up on a quarterback just because of one bad season. I don't see that happening. I genuinely don't. I don't think you do that. I mean, look at Dak. Dak always makes the playoffs and always loses and before people expect. And look at the money that he's making and look at the situation that Dallas is in. I mean, they still are a playoff team. I don't think you really give up on that just because of one bad season. I don't think that's what's going to happen. But those are my thoughts. Darnold, Fields, lots of people out there no. Justin Fields, no. Definitely not Justin Fields. I'm sorry, but Justin Fields is overrated. He was overrated by Chicago Bears fans. He's never had a solid season. It took him 3 years to have a game where he threw for 300 yards, and even then he still lost to a washed-up Russell Wilson. Sam Darnold, he's in a fantastic system, and that's the only reason why he's performing so well. I fully think that there's a very good chance that he ends up flopping in the postseason. Would not be surprised if the Vikings only play one playoff game. No. Neither one of those two quarterbacks are an option for me. Over Brock Purdy? Definitely not. Again, I'm not that high on Brock Purdy being an elite quarterback, but he is better than Darnold and he's better than Justin Fields. I'm sorry to say this, but that is just how it is in my opinion. Especially better than Fields. But those are just my thoughts. So we're going to go into the fourth segment where I talk about the Jimmy Butler trade update, because there is a little bit of an update. Again, I don't know if we really count this as an update because apparently there's not much really going on, and we're going to talk about that in the fourth segment right after the short break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we're going to talk about the Jimmy Butler trade and sort of what's going on there. But I will mention Ashon's chat and what he had to say. Geez, my English was awful there. One of those two players, the two players he's talking about, are Darnold or Fields at $20 million compared to Purdy at $60 million. I get that, but at the same time, I don't think you'd really give up on Brock Purdy like that. And also, we have no idea how much money he's going to ask for. It really depends. It really depends how much money he's going to ask for. Again, like he said, his main goal is trying to win for the organization. So maybe, big maybe, he doesn't ask for all that much money and it's still at an affordable price. And I doubt that, but maybe. There is still that maybe. And also, I would not give $20 million to Justin Fields. Would not do that. Sam Darnold, still rather questionable, will not do that. Have to see what he has to do, what he does in the postseason before I even make that analysis. But that's just what I think. Because again, not a big fan of Sam Darnold, and despite the fact that Sam Darnold has had an incredible season with the Vikings, it could all crash and burn going into the postseason. That's genuinely, it's happened before. And yes, I understand every athlete says that, but you never know. You never know. Define the incompetence that... Okay, here we go into this football talk. Define the incompetence that the Dolphins kept both Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel after the filler of the last 5 years and still thinking of keeping Tua, even with his serious injury concerns. Really, I feel like this situation could have all been avoided if they just drafted Justin Herbert. I still stand by that. And to be honest, it is incompetent. Yes, it is genuinely incompetent. But no one is talking about Tua like they're talking about Brock. Tua is making all of that money, but he hasn't proved that he earned all that money. I mean, Brock Purdy, while I'm not a big fan of him and his the fact that he needs these ridiculous weapons, he has still been able to consistently make it far into the postseason, and that's something that you can't really ignore. That's genuinely what I think about that. And that's 5 years compared to Brock Purdy and only the 2 years or the 3 years that we've seen of him. So not a very fair comparison, at least in my opinion. Not to mention Brock Purdy is also not as injury prone as Tua. So there's a very big difference there, at least in my opinion. But going into this fourth segment talking about Jimmy Butler and the situation that's going on around the NBA with Jimmy Butler, from what I'm aware of, okay, here we go. More football. Bengals, would you trade a first-round pick for Crosby? That's a very, very good question, honestly. And I really, really want to talk about that a little bit more, but I do feel like if I do talk about that, then I'm going to veer off already more than I've done already. I'm trying to talk basketball here. with Jimmy Butler, and I can't because this is a very good question. I'm going to have to just skip it for now just because I really want to get into this basketball segment with Jimmy Butler. If I do have time, because we are well over the time, then I'll talk about that later on in the segment. So just stay tuned for when I do answer that question. Again, only reason why I'm not answering it is because I did go a little bit over the time. I mean, we're at 50 minutes right now, and I should have already ended the fourth segment, which is, you lose track of the time with talks like that. But from what we know, with the Jimmy Butler situation, at least this information was given at 10 o'clock or towards 11 in the morning. Unless there's a real change in the trade market for Jimmy, the Miami Heat and Jimmy Butler, they have really no traction on a trade. So it might seem like they're going to be continuing their partnership with his 7-game suspension concluding. And both Butler and the Heat are interested in a trade, but there are some offers that... There are very few offers that the front office is willing to entertain. And that's to be expected, because for some reason, Jimmy Butler still thinks he's in his prime, despite the fact that he's aging, and despite the fact that he's putting up some of the worst numbers of his entire career. I'm not even going to get into the numbers, but I really think that Jimmy Butler is an overrated player, and I think that him in the postseason, a lot of people, they call him this playoff performer and this ridiculous playoff Jimmy is what they call it. I don't believe in that at all. He only plays well in the first round of the postseason, and then he tanks. He's done that before. The only time where he hasn't done that was in the bubble against the Lakers, and people still think that he is that caliber of a player. I don't see that at all. He heavily underperformed against the Knicks. He heavily underperformed the last time he played the Boston Celtics, and he heavily underperformed against the Denver Nuggets, especially against the Nuggets in that final series. He played so bad and was the big reason why the Nuggets easily destroyed them for the most part of the postseason. But according to Brian Windhorst, he said, quote, "From my discussions, I don't think the Heat have any traction. I don't think there's any deal that they like. I don't think there are many teams that are offering anything they consider any actionable thing. I think the Heat are preparing for a future with Jimmy Butler back on the roster. We'll see if that can get worked out because he's in the midst of a 7-game suspension." And obviously, the biggest problem is that, the Miami Heat, they don't really want to pay Jimmy Butler all of that money. And Ash Owen has an NBA question. Does Butler move the needle for any NBA team? That still remains to be seen because, again, he still thinks that he's in his prime. It really depends on what team he gets traded to. There's been talks that, and no. Not for the Lakers. That's definitely not going to happen. I don't see that happening whatsoever. The teams that could end up, at least the way I see it, the teams that could end up being a really good fit for him, the Spurs, they would be very nice. I think he moves the needle with the Spurs. The Nuggets, they're also a team that could be in the running. The Phoenix Suns are also a team because they are looking to trade Bradley Beal, and that could be a move that the Suns might consider. The Bucks, they have to do a couple of things before they end up trading for Jimmy, but they could also consider that, and I think that would move the needle for the Bucks as well, depending on whether they give up just Damian Lillard or if they give up Chris Middleton and Bobby Portis, which are both options on the table. They just have to move around some players to adjust their salary cap because they are like $6 million above the second apron. So those are like the few teams that I think could be the difference makers. I really don't think that he would move much of a needle with the Lakers, especially with their new offensive set that they have in mind. I mean, the Lakers with JJ Redick, they are shooting three-pointers. They're shooting way more three-pointers than what they previously shot, and Jimmy Butler is not really the best three-point shooter in the NBA. In fact, you can argue that he's less than average at three-point shooting, and that might only hurt the offense for the Lakers as opposed to helping the offense. Defensively, yes, he could provide some sort of value, but I don't think that would really work for the Lakers. Now, whether or not the Heat prepare a future for Jimmy Butler, it still remains to be seen. I don't think they're going to be paying him a lot of money like how he wants. But the Phoenix Suns appear to be the team most motivated to acquire Jimmy Butler. But it would require Bradley Beal waiving his no-trade clause and a team willing to acquire him. Miami is also believed to consider trading for Beal, who is right now being a non-starter for some reason on the Suns. And Butler could become a free agent in the offseason if he declines his $52.4 million player option, which he'd most likely do. It lessens the load for LeBron. Yes, I understand LeBron is 40 years old. He's still doing all of this, and he still is trying to carry the team. But again, I don't think that would mesh well with the team. And who would they have to give up in order to get Jimmy Butler? Because remember, the Lakers, they are a little bit above the second apron, and the issue with this is trying to figure out how to make the salaries match. They might have to give up a hefty amount of players that I don't think is good for the Lakers to do. I don't think getting Jimmy Butler is going to help the team when you're trying to shoot more threes. This is why they traded away D'Angelo Russell, because they went ahead and they got a 3-and-D player to shoot those threes and to legitimately play defense. Jimmy is not a 3-and-D player. And we've already seen what kind of moves the Lakers make to try and lessen the load for LeBron, like getting Russell Westbrook, and that still doesn't do anything because LeBron still has to carry the team. So I don't think that's a really good idea. I don't think that's also an idea that's even plausible to happen. Now, the Phoenix Suns sending Bradley Beal to the Lakers, that's a move that could happen. That could possibly put the Lakers over the top. And Bradley Beal has said that he would waive his no trade clause for a team like the Lakers. So that is still an option. But Jimmy Butler, I don't think so. And Beal would be a little bit more of a fit. While Beal doesn't have defense, he does know how to shoot that three. And Butler is better than Westbrook. Yes, he is. But as of right now, as of right now, of course, Jimmy Butler is better than Westbrook. And he most likely was better than Westbrook than what Westbrook was on the Lakers. But again, Jimmy Butler, like I keep saying this, he's very overrated. And his numbers are nowhere near as good as you really think they are. Again, he's having one of the worst seasons of his career. He's averaging 17 points per game, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. Now, the points per game is really what I'm looking at. And the field goal percentage, while it's okay, again, this is also because he had he hasn't played the full season yet. But I don't see that happening. I genuinely don't. He's not a competent enough shooter for them to make that move. And not to mention, he's also getting a little bit old. I don't think that that's what the Lakers would want. I personally would not want that. And yes, he is better than Westbrook. I don't think that's a move that the Lakers are going to consider doing, because you also have to remember he's going to demand a lot of money going into the next season. Are the Lakers willing to pay for that, for all that money? I doubt that. Is LeBron going to play another year? No idea. Butler's player comp of the past player is no. We are not comparing Butler to Dwayne Wade. We're not doing that. That's not happening. He is nowhere near the same caliber as D. Wade was. That is not happening whatsoever. No. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. I'm not even entertaining that. It's not happening. No. So, with that being said, ending off on that, we are going to go into the fifth segment where we recap all of the NBA games that went down. I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned. We're not comparing Jimmy Butler to D. Wade. No. And we are back with the fifth and the final segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fifth segment, we're going to recap all of the NBA games that happened yesterday. I'm just pulling up the box scores for all of these games. And to answer that last question from Ash Owen, he said the player comparison for Jimmy Butler would be D. Wade. That is not true. No, that is not it. He's closer to Paul Pierce, if anything, than Dwayne Wade. And the only difference between that is that he can somewhat play defense, and you just swap the defense for three-point shots, really, between those two players. That's a much more fairer comparison, at least in my opinion. Like, a Paul Pierce with defense, really. Like, no, he is not like Dwayne Wade. No, I refuse that. No. D. Wade, and this is what I'm talking about when I say that Jimmy Butler is incredibly overrated, because we get comparisons like this. Like, no, that is just not it. But that's all that I had to pickpocket on. Now, yesterday's games, rather surprising. We're going to start with the most surprising, the Lakers losing to Dallas when Dallas did not have Kyrie or Luka Doncic. Now, Dallas entered this game 1-13 without Kyrie or Luka. And of course, they beat the Lakers by almost 10 plus points. Of course that happens, because I swear the Lakers are unbelievably, like, they're so, what's the word? Jimmy Butler is, Paul Pierce is more clutch than Jimmy. And so what? We're saying that Dwayne Wade isn't clutch? Is that what we're saying? We're saying that Dwayne Wade is not more clutch than Paul Pierce? That's blasphemy if you say that. That is absolutely blasphemy if you say that. And yes, Paul Pierce is, you can make that argument that Paul Pierce is a little bit more clutch than Jimmy. You could also make the argument that Jimmy Butler is also clutch in his own way. He's had clutch moments in the postseason. I'm sure everyone in the media knows those clutch moments, but, it's around the same scale, at least in my opinion. But back on this Lakers versus Mavericks game, jeez, the Lakers, they were terrible. They got outscored by a lot. LeBron probably had the dunk of the year in this game, but again, he's 40 years old, 18 points, 10 rebounds, 8 assists. He's the greatest basketball player of all time. Anthony Davis, 21 points, 12 rebounds, but guess what? Nobody else on the team could score, and that was a big reason why they ended up losing this game. Klay Thompson hit 3 straight three-pointers, and that was basically all for Klay Thompson. He's saying Wade deferred to Bron in Miami. I have no idea what you mean by... Oh, you mean by in the clutch. Actually, no. There was a play where LeBron gave the ball to Dwayne Wade, and Dwayne Wade said, "Everyone get out of my way." He drew a foul, got an and one, and ended up winning the game in the end. And of course you're going to defer to LeBron, because LeBron is the most clutch player and the best player in the history of the NBA. But let's not act like Dwayne Wade is not a clutch player, and let's not act like he has not had his clutch moments in his own right, and especially in the postseason. Remember, he won a championship before LeBron did. So we're not going to just highlight Dwayne Wade's career when he was playing with Bron. We're going to take all of it, and Dwayne Wade has had a lot of clutch moments. So we're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're not going to act like Dwayne Wade is not clutch. No, we're not going to do that. For the Mavericks, Quentin Grimes, he ended up getting 23 points. PJ Washington Jr. had 22 points. And, of course, that was enough to beat the Lakers, because the Lakers are so bipolar in winning a lot of these games. It's unbelievable. Speaking of Miami, the Heat, they ended up beating the Warriors, because the Warriors are not as competent of a team as you think. And they did it, of course, without Jimmy Butler. Tyler Hero had 14. Jamie Jacquez Jr. had 18. Bam Adebayo had 19 and 9. And Nikola Jovic, not Jokic, Jovic, ended up getting 20 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists. Now, Curry for the Golden State Warriors, he ended up dropping 31 points, but it was not enough against the Miami Heat, because this team is not good. Dennis Schroeder is still playing bad basketball, 2 for 10, 1 for 7. And again, this team is not as good as people thought they were in the beginning of the year. Houston, they ended up beating the Washington Wizards, because of course they did. The Wizards, they only had one 20-point scorer, and that was Corey Kispert. Aside from that, there was no Jordan Poole to try and bail them out. And the Houston Rockets, they ended up winning this game 135-112 with the help of Sengun dropping 26, 10, and 6. Thompson dropping 20 and 15. Amen Thompson, by the way. He said, "I'm not hating on Wade. I'm just saying Jimmy could coexist with Bron like Wade did." No, he could not. No, he could not. No. D-Wade is a finals MVP. He was a finals MVP before he even played with LeBron. No, he could not. No. We're not doing that. No, Jimmy could not coexist with LeBron like Wade could. He could not. No, he could not. They both need the ball 24/7. That is not what's going to happen. And Jimmy Butler has too big of an ego to take a back seat. He is not going to do that. I guarantee you he's not. No. But regardless, Jalen Green, he ended up dropping 29 points in this game. And Fred VanVleet had 19 and 12. Now, should be noted that their all-caliber rookie Reed Shepherd, he ended up playing in the G League. The reason why he was playing in the G League is because the rotation at the guards, like the Houston Rockets are an incredibly deep team. They have a lot of good guards in their rotation, and they can't put put him in that rotation right now. So he needs to get some of his reps in the G League. He had like 50-something points in the G League. So he definitely doesn't belong there. But again, there's not really a good spot that he fits in the rotations, because right now the Houston Rockets are winning with the rotations that they have, and they don't want to mess that up. Now, in another shocker, the Hornets, they ended up beating the Phoenix Suns. They ended up winning 115-104. And on the Suns side, Devin Booker had 39 and 10. And let's see, Kevin Durant, he had 26 points. Bradley Beal had an abysmal 10 points. And on the Hornets side, LaMelo Ball had 32, 10, 7, and 4. And Miles Bridges had 21 points and 7 rebounds. Timberwolves, they ended up beating the Pelicans, because of course they did. 104-97. Anthony Edwards had 32 points and 9 rebounds. Rudy Gobert had 7 points, 14 rebounds, and 6 blocks in this game. Julius Randle only put up 16 points, but again, you're going up against the Pelicans, and there's not really much that you need to do against the Pelicans. DeJounte Murray had 29 points and 6 assists, along with 6 steals, but it wasn't enough against the Timberwolves. And let's see, LeBron hasn't won without a superstar guard as a sidekick. Okay, and Jordan hasn't won without Scottie Pippen. What's the excuse there? You need talented players to win. You need talent. It is a team sport for a reason. You don't win with one guy. Allen Iverson tried it, didn't work. James Harden somewhat tried it, didn't work. I don't count the bubble. Of course you don't count the bubble year, because nobody counts it when LeBron wins the bubble. Nobody counts it, right? Like, that's just the logic that everyone uses, because whenever LeBron wins, it doesn't count. If it was anyone else, then they would have counted it. That is blasphemy. That is blasphemy. The Lakers don't have a superstar guard. Again, LeBron has already proven that he can win a championship without a superstar guard, so it doesn't matter. Not to mention the fact you need a good team to win championships. It's not just going to be, LeBron is 40. Do you really expect him to win a championship? I don't. Unless he has an actual talented team, I don't expect him to win a championship. That being said, I'm not going to count him out in the postseason. But still, that's not happening. That's genuinely not. Like, people should not expect this much from a 40-year-old. It is ridiculous. And regardless, it doesn't matter. Like, LeBron has already won without a superstar guard before. He's done it before. Whether you count it or not, history counts it, and he's done it before. Period, done, end of story. And it's very rare that teams nowadays are actually able to even win a championship without a talented guard. It's very rare that that happens now. In more NBA news, the Hawks, they ended up beating the Jazz. Trae Young dropped 24 and 20, and he also hit the game winner from half court against the Utah Jazz, so that's also really nice. And then the Celtics, they completely destroyed the Denver Nuggets, 118-106. There was no Nikola Jokic in this one, so that's a big reason why they ended up losing. But Russell Westbrook ended up dropping 26, 9, and 6, which is actually pretty solid for Russ, especially now. And his field goal percentage wasn't even that bad. He shot 50%, 9 for 18, and he also shot 4 for 9 from 3. So again, pretty solid game from Russ. He ended up playing better than Jamal Murray, who is starting to look really off. But again, Jamal only plays good against the Lakers, so I'm not really that surprised. He finished the game with 19 points, 1 for 5 from 3. And on the Celtics side, Jason Tatum continues his dominance, 29 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds, 2 blocks, 1 steal. Porzingis was the second best player on the floor in this one, 25 points and 11 rebounds. Jaylen Brown had 14, Drew Holiday had 19. No Derek White, so obviously this team is just too good that there's no real problem with that. And that was basically it. Heat made the finals that year. They were trash. More proof that was an outlier. Oh, don't give me that. That was literally the year where playoff Jimmy Butler was born. He was playing really, really well in that postseason. And it doesn't matter if they were bad, then what's the other team's excuse? What was the other team's excuse? Like, genuinely. Not to mention that the year after the bubble, that actually a few years after the bubble, those two teams end up making the conference finals anyway, with arguably a worse roster than what they had before. So I don't see any sort of argument with that. I genuinely don't. Like the Heat were able to make the finals in when they went up against the Denver Nuggets. Was that a fluke year? Was that a fluke when they made it all the way? And in that same year, the Lakers made it to the Western Conference Finals. Was that a fluke year? I don't think so. I don't think that was a fluke because they've shown that they're still able to do so. Like, what? Does not make any sense, at least to me. And they did that with Darvin Ham, who in my opinion is one of the worst coaches in the NBA right now. So, no, I'm not taking that as an excuse. The teams each had to play in the exact same conditions. They just lost. Period. End of story. The Celtics, they go back and forth beating the Heat. They lose to the Heat. Then they beat the Heat. Then they lose to the Heat. Then they beat the Heat. It's not an outlier. It's genuinely not. That's just what happens. And the Clippers, I mean, we've seen the rest of the Clippers. It's not that big of a deal. I have no idea what that notification was either. Boston coach got fired as a result, so owners thought the same. The owners can think what they want. Do the owners know anything about ball? No, they don't. Let's be real here. Some of the owners, they just have it so they can make money. And no, there are not many owners that actually know ball like that. Like, are you really going to listen to owners when you're talking about those kinds of situations? No, I am not. I saw it with my own eyes. We saw players and we saw teams. They compete in the exact same situations. They each were evenly matched. They each had a good chance to win. It's only because LeBron ended up winning that people don't count it. It is that simple. But that's all that I have in this final segment. So thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. As usual, we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether it's a hot take, a burning question, something you're dying to share. We're all ears. If you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat, or you can use the link displayed below the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net, to send in your comments and donations that way. Either or really helps the show. That's all that I have for today on this final segment. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit.